Hello everybody. I'm doing my video analysis over Teach Us All by Sonia Lohman, which was released in 2017. First thing that needs to be gone over is populations. The populations gone over in this video or documentary, are African Americans, Hispanics, and Islamic peoples. The first issue touched on in this documentary is Brown versus Board of Education and the African American students that were the first to integrate in Little Rock, Arkansas. And it shows a awful scene about how people were spitting on these kids and everything. And that's just awful, but it showed that to show how people don't necessarily, or they're not open about that nowadays, about wanting to segregate, but they do this idea I've heard called white flight, which is basically where they have African Americans or minorities moving into a district. The white people will move out of the district and more or less congregate in their own areas. And what happens in these areas is that funds will go to these predominantly white schools as opposed to distributing them equally amongst all the schools in the area. Another issue is gentrification, which is the opposite of white flight, where white people and wealthier people will move into an impoverished area and more or less take it over and drive up prices and stuff like that, and basically move the people that can't afford to live there anymore out, places they've lived in for a long time. There's another issue addressed in this, and which is barriers in admission to these private schools and these academies that are you don't really have to pay to go to, but they have more of a recruiting process. And these barriers for admission are like, one of the examples shown in the film is having times that both parents have to be at a meeting with the student, or like an interview process during the day when most people are at work. And poorer families may not be able to have both parents take off work to go and do this interview, which means their child would be excluded. They also have monetary barriers in these private schools, like thousands of dollars you have to pay in admission that aren't available to everybody. Other issues that have came up are teachers not caring about what the student's going through at home, or not caring about the students in general and getting burnt out. And they show a good example of an administrator that does care. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but he went to this school, Baseline School, because he had such a passion for bringing all these kids up, because he grew up in a impoverished home himself. And sometimes teachers don't want to work in these impoverished areas because they don't get the funds that other schools would get. So one of the people said that he's talked to leaders of school districts and that they're manning their schools with warm bodies. Just basically means anybody that they can put in that position they will, because they are having such a lack of people to work. Another thing is metal detectors and profiling. There'll be metal detectors out in front of these poorer schools full with more minorities, but not in front of the schools with more white people. And this makes the children feel like they are being profiled and being called criminals, basically. They said that in the film. Another issue is states taking over school boards, which leaves parents with little to no say in what's going on until an election comes around when they can vote for the state offices. A myth that is tackled in this film is the myth that education is equal in America today and is very different than how it used to be during the times of Jim Crow. And things that I've learned is I wasn't really aware of the whole white flight situation. They call it voting with your feet, voting for segregation with your feet. I was not really aware that that was a thing that was going on. Uh, Overall, I believe this is a very enlightening documentary because a lot of this stuff I've never thought about. I'm not somebody that has had to go through this kind of stuff, thankfully. And yeah, I've never thought about it, and it's never crossed my mind. And I'm glad that I watched this, so I'm more enlightened on these things. Thank you.